one of those things. We live in a society right now that we're drawn back to, and this will go back to what I was saying. Like we're drawn back into history all the time. Like popular culture right now seems to be driven by things like, take it for instance, take something like Mad Men that is now kind of like defining fashion, defining, in a way, music. It's defining culture right now. So to be drinking sort of a label that hasn't really changed since the 50s.
I think the fact that it's so steeped in history
It's
is
so
really appealing.
It's simply put, it's good juice.
Yeah.
Well, that's right, but it's just like, even on the outside, it hasn't, even the label-wise, even the label itself has not really changed at all. Like, we know it's, like, it hasn't changed a lot. There's a few changes here and there.
I have a bottle from the 70s.
Yeah.
Sit side by side.
And they look almost like, you can, like, there's some fading, there's some little changes.
By the way, bring back the old labels.
Super soft.
Yeah, the old label's cool.
The old label is pretty awesome.
You need the cartoon.
And the bottom line is it tastes really freaking good.
It's all, I mean, yeah.
And it looks cool. It appeals on two different levels because you've got that historical contents to it. A lot of people, there's a lot of perception in, I don't know, I would say if I was to define the ages, between the ages of 30 and like 45, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, old granddad or old crow.
A lot of the old
it's cheaper, so it's bad. You know what I'm saying? Like old Fitzgerald, all of those. When you start tasting through them, they're amazing, and they're still inexpensive. And I think that there's a lack of marketing behind them, that people end up having the perception that they're inferior spirits. And in reality, I think that the reason they're fantastic is because they're delicious, they're great value, and because of because there's not as much marketing behind them, they're able to stay at that price.
It's also important to note that the pricing is the reason that they're so applicable in cocktails, as well as the price point, as well as the flavor. I mean, without that price point, then it makes it harder for a bar program to make a profit, and so those brands are adequately priced and adequate for cocktail use because of their flavor profile and what they bring to the table. So I want to note that, because if you bring the price up, then we can't make cocktails with it.
Yeah, and it's nice to get a shot in a beer for less than $10 these days.
Yeah,
honestly, like.
You make a very good point with these days, because we're going to talk about the recession. We're in a kind of recession, so the idea of these old whiskeys and bourbons harkens back to an idea of the good old days, back in the 50s and 60s, when you could take a 2-hour lunch break, or you had a meeting and you could open up a bottle of bourbon at your desk with somebody. And
Shit,
say,
it was in your office. Oh.
Right, in your office. You had a whole bar in your office and say, hey, you want a drink? Let's get a bourbon. These are these old kind of bourbons that they drank 50 or 60 years ago, which is a great, I think, marketing standpoint for these days, to look back at the good old days when we're in a recession, when money's a little tighter. We say, oh, well, we can afford these good old days bourbons that we used to have that are kind of recession-proof, really.
Yeah.
I think that's